My name is Ethan. When you were growing up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, it was impossible to avoid the ghost of Melissa Witt. Her name was whispered in the hallways. Her story is told in an uneasy voice. When she disappeared one December evening in 1994, she was 19 years old, kind and full of promise. She had parked her car at Bowling World, her keys still in hand, when something or someone pulled up that night. A few weeks later, they discovered her body deep in the Ozark National Forest, and leave it there for later. Melissa's story has always haunted me. Maybe it was because the whole city had to bear her heavy loss. This may be the result of LaDonna Humphrey's documentary, You've Been Ground, which describes her ordeal in vivid, heartbreaking terms. Or perhaps it was something more primitive. The fear that the darkness that claimed Melissa would come for us all. That happened 3 years ago. On this January night, the darkness became heavier than usual, and the cold crept across your skin. I was riding the train home from basketball practice. The lights from the barber shop shine brightly through the darkness as he hurries to get a quick haircut. It was 7 p.m. when I left, not late, but the wind was icy and the sky was unrelentingly overcast. The road I took home was famous, a narrow, cracked road, surrounded by dense forest on both sides. There was only darkness and silence. There were no houses or streetlights. I'm familiar with it. I had been there 100 times, but that night I felt strange. I was listening to music through my AirPods when I heard a strange noise coming from the bottom of the screen. At first I thought it was a mistake, something constant or distortion. But when the song ends, the sound continued, so soft it was almost inaudible. Like a distant shout, I stopped walking and took out one of my earbuds to try to listen. Then I heard it. My name was AQ. It was faint and almost gently blown by a wind, but it's clearly visible. I looked back at the empty road and the dark forest. I immediately thought it must be someone I know. Small town, right? Maybe my friend was trying to cheat on me. Hello? Was not an answer. I waited as silence fell. My breath blurred in front of me. This time it rang again. Ethan. The tone was urgent, penetrating, and inaccurate. Not only does it sound unlike anyone I know, but it still doesn't sound like a human at all. It is reflected in a distant and strange manner that contrasts with the desolate surroundings. My chest tightened. Every instinct screams at me to run, but I didn't do it. It's not finished yet. I chose to go to the middle of the road to try and get a glimpse of the curve ahead. Darkness feels alive. It's as if it's watching me. The tree leaned a little too far towards the road. It feels like the forest is closing in. Then he spoke again. Ethan, he said. This time it was a different tone, more angry, cruel. It had edges that scraped my skin, like nails on a chalkboard. Now, it's mocking me. He took me in like he was bait instead of calling me by name. I couldn't stop moving. I couldn't think. Then he chuckled. No ordinary joke. It sounded distorted and gut-wrenching. It's like coming out of a nightmare. It reverberated around me, and in a short period of time I believe I saw something. A shadow, a figure, on the side of the road. Then I ran away. I doubt my life has ever gone this fast before. My lungs burned and my legs felt as if they were about to give off. But I didn't stop until I reached the front door. Even so, I didn't dare change. The next day I told my friends, expecting that one person will laugh and accept it as a joke. There is no soul to do it. They don't look as stable as I do. From what I heard that night, it wasn't them. At first I tried to see if it was my imagination or coldness deceiving me, but the more I thought about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something else, something to do with Melissa. After that night, her story is even more personal. Stories are woven into the fabric of the city, though. Her last moments as she was dragged out of a secure, well-lit parking lot into darkness. Forever in my heart. Did you hear anything? She is drawn into the shadows by a voice calling her name. LaDonna's documentary delves into this unresolved issue and features Chris Boyd Sr. and J.C. McCarthy. detective writer's relentless pursuit of justice. However, Forrest was just like the dramatic and inevitable darkness that consumed Melissa's final moments. It was the scariest aspect for me. On the road that night, I felt like I was seeing the same piece of darkness. Even after I got home, I never felt safe. Sometimes I think I'll listen to it again when I'm alone at night. Beyond the edge of the light, a soft voice calls my name. And I wonder if that's really a coincidence. Or will there be something left, waiting to be called? Melissa Witt's story serves as a reminder that evil is never as far away as we think. And for me, that darkness feels closer than ever. Andy Caldwell, detective, is my name. Over the years, I have dealt with some of the most confusing and frightening cases imaginable. I'm OJ, the Simpsons that rocked Las Vegas. But there are stories that haunt me more than the famous episodes. It's a story that goes head to head between crime and the supernatural. If you want to listen, I'll give it to you. At the peak of my career, in 2007, I received a call about a violent burglary involving O.J. Simpson, the theft of sports memorabilia that he claimed was theft. Strangely enough, it was planned by a man who once embodied the American dream. My team and I installed a security camera outside room 1203 at the Palms Hotel. What we discovered was even stranger than the story. Simpson seemed completely unaffected by his serious actions. He displayed a cocky spirit and a strange friendliness. He welcomes us. His charm was almost disturbing. This is a man who thinks he is above the law. After an investigation that brings together a tangled and confusing plot, Simpson was convicted of 12 felonies. It was then classified as gunshot-related, and he was given a year to serve the contract. A once venerated icon will be seriously ruined after spending 9 years in a Nevada state prison, although the case is notorious. But another story from my past still makes me uncomfortable. This is a story I have never told publicly. In the early 1990s, my brother John celebrated his birthday at a hip restaurant called The Melting Pot. Located on a busy street with many cafes and boutiques, attract a variety of customers. My brother's friend Kevin is the owner of this place. His friend Sophia is a famous psychologist and has a knack for perceiving things that most of us have never seen. Because I didn't drink alcohol at that time, so I volunteered to drive John and my boyfriend at the time, Mark. The evening was filled with comedy music and unlimited drinks. By the end of the evening, John and Mark were completely tipsy. Without a second thought, I left Mark at his apartment and took John home. The next morning, Mark called me. His voice trembled with nervousness. "Andy," he said, something strange happened last night." "Shoshna," I responded. "I'm aware of the film I'm building for you," he said. I walked into the kitchen, placed the pan on the stove, and immediately passed out, he recalled. When he woke up, the kitchen walls also became black and covered in soot. The bottom of the pan has burn marks and clean holes, and the water is boiling. Gas flames burned so dangerously that his apartment turned into hell. But what shook me the most was the business card he found on the counter, one from the Melting Pot. He had no recollection of bringing it home. Next time we talk about this with Kevin, his answer was very profound. "That place is cursed," he announced. Sophia often complained about the dark energy that still lingered in the restaurant. She said there was a shadowy figure walking around the edge and using the customer's energy. Kevin brushed it off as superstitious. But as time passed, the atmosphere was unbearable. He decided to close the restaurant forever. When Kevin locked the door for the last time last night, he noticed something that completely surprised him. He was staring through the glass door. A terrifying figure suddenly appeared from the shadows. There was a cold malice in his eyes. Kevin said it felt like the agency was warning him to stay away. After a moment, the figure disappeared into the darkness. Kevin never returned to the building. As a detective, I've always relied on evidence and logic. However, these two events, Mark's near disaster and Kevin's terrifying encounter, reminded me of the line between what is known and what is known. J.C. Simpson's arrogance marks carelessness, and the darkness lurking in the melting pot. All of this reminds me of how close we are to chaos. Sometimes it's human nature, and sometimes we don't even understand. Even now, talking about this, I couldn't explain what was happening. One thing is certain: the differences between chaos and order, between light and shadow, are much blurrier than we think. And sometimes all we can do is tread carefully and hope the darkness doesn't get to us. My name is Laura Hayes, and I am a forensic psychologist. I have heard stories that cannot be explained, and has blurred the boundaries between the supernatural and the psychic over the years. I have a story for you today that connects two lives in ways that none of us could have predicted. The story involves Sarah, a strong woman, and Thomas Grayson, a private investigator with a talent for uncovering secrets. At first, it was not clear how they were related, but when the details come together, they create a terrifying picture of love, grief, and unexplained mystery. This was apparent to 18-year-old Sarah when we first met. A wise young woman with an indelible bond with her late father was a soldier who died when she was only 6 years old. Sarah's father loved and protected every detail. Before the latest mobilization, he helped create Build-A-Beer for Sarah and her siblings. He often sings "You Are My Sunshine" to comfort them, and Bear plays a recording of him doing just that. But after he came back, Bear's larynx stopped working. It was quiet for many years until 2 weeks after his death. At a family reunion, Sarah fell down the stairs, and they heard the bear cry from above again. When someone in the family is upset or in pain, the bear began to play by itself. The event was written down because it was a strange coincidence. As time passes, a father's love still seemed to watch over them as the years passed, and Sarah thought those days were behind her. The college acceptance letter excited her for the first time. She tears open the envelope in the kitchen, surrounded by her family. When the bear sang again for the first time in years, her father seemed to be celebrating with her at this time. Thomas Grayson was an experienced detective and is famous for his unrelenting pursuit of justice. While investigating his latest case, he found an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Emily is a young woman who disappeared several months ago under suspicious circumstances, and Thomas watched her disappear. Before she disappeared, Emily communicates with Thomas and leaves vague messages about stalking her. "He was always watching," she wrote in her diary. In an effort to find the truth, Thomas feels that Emily's case is connected to several other missing persons. One fateful night, Thomas' search leads him into an abandoned house. That's where Sarah enters the story. Sarah wakes up on the cold, dusty floor of the same house. She walks to her daughter's room and intercepts her miming. There was dried blood on her hands. The body of the deceased was a few feet away. With her mind filled with a crooked smile, muffled screams, and scattered memories of the party, she felt frightened. She didn't know how she ended up there. As Sarah tried to piece the events together, she heard a small, eerie voice say, "Help me. Help him. Find the truth." Then a pale sorrow appeared in the form of a ghost. That's Emily. Emily's ghost introduces herself and asks Sarah for help. Emily's big eyes were filled with urgency as she shouted out, "He's coming back!" Emily ordered Sarah to check the dead man's bag, where she found a blood-stained business card labeled Private Investigator Thomas Grayson. Emily reveals that Thomas is investigating her disappearance. No one wants him to find out the truth, but he is going to do it, she said. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed throughout the house, and Sarah's heart was pounding. He was going. "You have to hurry," Emily demanded. Sarah walked carefully through the house, looked for ominous signs of the past: broken phone, broken wine glass, and Emily's diary, which is partially buried under the rubble. It depicts a woman suffering from obsession. "He thinks he can own me," one message read. Sarah discovers a secret room in the basement filled with newspaper clippings about missing persons and pictures of women like Emily. It was obvious that this house belonged to a hunter. As Sarah absorbs the terrifying truth, Footsteps echoed above her. She armed herself with a heavy lantern in preparation for conflict. A man appeared, the same man whose body she saw earlier. But he's not just a man. He is something more than that, he chuckled. You shouldn't have come here. A look of hatred flashed in his eyes. What followed was a battle of wills. Emily's spirit guides Sarah. By helping her collect clues, Sarah comes to find a house which is connected to the spirits that live there. It is the center of suffering and betrayal. A broken mirror in the attic that seems to hold the house's evil power is the secret of salvation. Sarah smashes the glass with every ounce of courage, releasing a wave of soul-killing energy. As day breaks, Sarah flees as the house begins to crumble. She was covered in blood but still alive. She carried Emily's diary and Thomas's business card with her, which is a testament to the horrors she discovered. Sarah went straight to the police station. She handed him the diary and said, "That's it. All the truth is here." The detective turned the page and nodded solemnly. Long-awaited justice had finally arrived. For Sarah, she believed she was able to survive that night because her father was there. The bear's song was no longer played, but she felt his love guided her through the darkest times of her life. One of the most profound episodes I've ever seen was this one, which is a clash between the supernatural and psychic powers. It serves as a reminder of the flexibility of the human mind, the immortality of love, and that truth can be seen from time to time, even from beyond the grave.